Good morning. Another Monday has come around. These Mondays are really mounting up in lockdown. Today I want to look at 3 antique samplers, and we're going to start with the beautiful Anne Garlis. And the reason I've chosen her to show you today was this morning I was looking at eBay and at antique samplers for sale, and surprise, surprise, Anne Garlis was on eBay for sale. Now, she often does come up for sale on eBay, but what is being offered is actually a print of the original sampler. And you have to be very, very careful when you buy off eBay. And I don't think it's because people know they have a print and are trying to pass it off as an original. These prints are very, very good, and they're very convincing underneath glass, where the glass is slightly obscuring what's underneath it. But many people have got caught buying samplers and finding out that they are prints. And unless you've bought from a very reputable dealer or auction house, it can be very hard to get your money back. With auctions, it's always buyer beware. Now, when I see Anne come up for sale on eBay, I always email the seller, and then they've looked and they realise that what they've got is not an original sampler, and they've either modified the listing or taken it down. It'll be very interesting to see what today's seller does when they read the message that I've sent them. Let's have a little talk about Anne, because Anne has actually played a very important role in Hands Across the Sea samplers starting. And it all goes back to, I think it was the Christmas of, it was the Christmas of 2014, and Sandra and her husband Bob came to stay with us. And we were in my study, we were chatting away about samplers, as one does when you're with another needleworker, and we were looking around the study, and we both decided, out of all the samplers on the walls, this was the one that we really wanted to stitch. And when I had acquired this sampler, I had shown her to a reproductionist, and she declined to reproduce it because she felt it wasn't commercially viable. When you reproduce samplers with freehand work, they take so many hours to chart and painstakingly working and studying them and trying to interpret them and put them into diagrams that other people can follow. It's hard work. Anyway, Sandra and I, we were talking, we thought, well, we could stitch this from a photograph. And we decided that we would, and then we said, well, another one of our friends would probably want to stitch her, and we spoke to her, and yes, she did, and then another one. And these were the groups of needleworkers that we often had little private stitch-alongs with. So we thought, right, okay, well, there's so many of us, we need to sit down and do this properly. And we very quickly realised it's one thing stitching something yourself to putting something into a format that other people can follow your instructions. So we decided we would put Anne back on the wall, and we would pick other samplers to chart, and I chose Anne Forfeit and Sandra chose Susanna Milne. Now, Anne wasn't our first release because in my naivety, I hadn't thought about supplies. Anne was a very big sampler, and I wanted to stitch her on lakeside linen, and I needed a full yard. So I had to wait for one to be dyed, and it took several months. So that's how Mary Ann Bourne's came to be our first sampler. and Susanna Milne, our second sampler. Then Anne came out later when we managed to secure the full yard of linen, and Suzanne model stitched her for us. Anyway, Sandra and I have never got round to reproducing Anne Garlis, but one day we will. When you look at Anne, sometimes people describe her as Anne Garlis, and it's because in the surname of Garlis, the first S is the long S, but her name is actually Anne Garlis. And you will notice that Anne is a vanity sampler. If you look at the year, it was originally stitched as 1826, but at some stage it has been altered to read 1826. And this is probably at some stage Anne wanted to take 6 years off her age. Maybe she married an older man. That's perfectly possible. And it's maybe a first or even a second or third marriage. We just don't know. Isn't that bird fabulous? When you actually look at the antique sampler and you look at the print, you very quickly realise that one is a print and one is a real sampler. So there we have the beautiful Anne Garlis, and she is a stunning sampler, and one day we'll get round to reproducing her. Anyway, let's have a look at the next sampler, and that is Hannah Campbell. And the reason I wanted to show, is she going to say yes, Hannah Campbell today is that when we were looking at Jane Fiddis, I mentioned that there was a possibility that Jane may have been an Irish sampler, although I think that she's more likely to be a Scottish sampler. Anyway, I wanted to show you Hannah because Hannah, without a shadow of doubt, is an Irish sampler. Hannah Campbell stitched her sampler, or finished her sampler, on the 12th of August 1838 in Ballypalladie. I love that word, Ballypalladie. It sort of rolls off the tongue. And I would have bought this sampler for many reasons, but I think the main reason that it excited me was because of Ballypalladie. Anyway, let's have a look at the sampler in a little bit more detail. Without reflections. Let's start at the bottom. This building has beads on the windows, and the windows are arched, and I wonder if that might possibly be a church. I need to investigate this more. Isn't she pretty? Sweet courtesy and winning smiles, manners mild and void of art. And I can't read this upside down. These are love's engaging, no, I can't do it that way, wiles. These are those which win the heart. Being dyslexic, there's no way I could read that upside down. Very pretty sampler. There's beads on the top of the flowers next to the heart as well. Really, really pretty sampler, and I'm so looking forward to reproducing her. I love the cartouche with the alphabet running, alternating down the sides of the centre diamond. Very, very pretty. Another sampler that's on the top of my to-do list. The trouble is, my to-do list is very top-heavy. Antique samplers and reproducing them are a bit like you've got something in your stash to stitch and it's going to be your next project, definitely your next project, and then you see something else and that comes in and the other one gets pushed back. but I am very determined to start this one soon. I just need to be able to concentrate for long periods of time, and I think that in lockdown all our routines have been disrupted, and being a domestic goddess, it takes so much time. It really, really does. It'll be nice to get back to normal, although I think getting back to normal is going to take a lot of doing. Anyway, I said I had 3 samplers, and the other sampler I want to show you is a fun little sampler, and many of you might think that's not normally Nicola's taste. Well, one of the things that I love is children's artwork. I find it fascinating looking at paintings that children do. I will get as much joy out of looking at a piece of a child's artwork as I would at looking at a Monet. Anyway, this sampler I bought, not necessarily to reproduce, but just because I loved it. And her name is Jane Heath or Jane Heath. I'm not quite sure about that 3rd letter in her last name. And I want to show you this sampler because there's been quite a bit of talk on the internet this weekend about colour. And colour is a very deceptive thing. We all see colour differently. And of course, because we're having conversations about colour on the internet, we're all looking at photographs, and we're all looking at different computer screens, and you can look at the same photograph on one computer screen, and say you're looking at your PC, your phone and your iPad, and they can all look slightly different. Colour is a very unusual thing, and I often get a wonderful surprise when I look at the back of a sampler. So we've looked at the front of this sampler. This little girl really had a vivid sense of colour. She loved her colours and her design, and that's sort of pretty funky from the front. But just wait until you see the back. Just one moment. Now put your sunglasses on, because this is really snazzy. Look at this. What fun this little girl must have had picking her colours. Look at the bottom of that vase. Let's look at the front again. Look at the front and look at the back. Look at the colours that she actually chose. This is actually showing a lot darker in this light than it would in real life. I love looking at this, and I love studying her colour choices. Her stitching is something else as well. Anyway, I thought that you would enjoy seeing that, and the surprise that we can get sometimes when we open up these samplers and look at the back. Anyway, there's Jane, a little something for you to enjoy seeing and learning about it. Colour is a very fascinating subject. I've got lots and lots of books about colour, and I really enjoy researching colours. The Jane Fiddis Stitch Along, the Facebook group is called Jane Fiddis Stitch Along. Lots of people are joining, and there's lots of chatter about kitting up. If you would like to come to Facebook and join the group, you would be very, very welcome. But if you don't use Facebook, I will be cross-posting on Instagram the Hands Across the Sea Samplers Instagram page, and I will periodically be talking about the stitch along in my little pop-up videos. Now, I've got to get back to being a domestic goddess. My husband is looking forward to having a nice lunch, and I've got to go and cook it, and I've got lots of housework to do this morning, and I've still got some charts to pack, but I'm getting very, very close to finishing my packing, and I know that needleworkers in the UK should be receiving some really nice envelopes this morning in the post, and hopefully everybody who lives overseas, there are charts already in the post on their way to you. Anyway, until the next time, have a good week, stay well, stay safe, and bye-bye.